Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to another late for class video. And for everyone who's terribly concerned in the comments below, no, I'm not actually late for class in these videos. It's just the name I've given to these car videos, in which I'm usually driving to and from or in between classes. So there you have it. I do want to call attention to my awesome t-shirt, my Adventures in Awful t-shirt from J.R. Finney and Cat Rocha, which you can see the whole thing, but I'll have to send a picture in or do something like that later. But yeah, if you haven't checked out J.R. Finney's YouTube channel, you need to go do that immediately. These shows are hilarious. Everybody just makes over these shows so much whenever they see them. And you need to subscribe to his channel. I have the link in the description. As to the topic at hand for this video, though, I wanted to talk about that Joker teaser that finally came out. So the teaser for the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie that was released the other day. This movie is a bad idea from its very conception, because you don't tell an origin story for the Joker. You don't give him a definitive origin story. This was the mistake that Batman 89 made. For all of the wonderful things that Batman 89 did, and it was a great film, and even with the Joker origin, it was at least a well-told story, a well-told origin, but that was a mistake. You don't give Joker an origin. That diminishes his character. The Joker is a force of nature. The Joker he exists as a antagonist to Batman. There's really no interesting stories that you can tell with the Joker outside of a Batman or a Batman hero or anybody like that. And I know people point, well, what about this story from the comics or this story from the comics? If you can make a case that any of those stories are great, they're only so because it's already established in that universe that who the Joker is in relation to Batman as an antagonist. He is that dark force, that dark mirror, the dark reflection of Batman, of all of Batman's villains, who are all supposed to be sort of dark mirrors or dark reflections of the hero in some way. The Joker is just, he rises to the top because he's just the strongest, the most profound. Batman is all about justice and self-control and order. And the Joker's all about chaos. The Joker's all about no control whatsoever, anarchy. Nothing for no reason for it, no reason to rhyme. And the Joker meets somebody in Batman who believes in something, believes in this idea of justice, believes in this idea of no killing, just as strongly as the Joker believes in nothing. The Joker believes that nothing is worth clinging to or whatever. So the Joker makes it his mission. The Joker has to tear down Batman. If the Joker must invalidate Batman's beliefs, invalidate Batman's belief system in order to, in turn, validate his own. It's a profound relationship, because the second the Joker does invalidate Batman's belief, if he were to ever make him kill, then in some way that actually invalidates the Joker's beliefs, because he's got a kinship with Batman in terms of they're the only ones who believe in something so strongly. It's a profound relationship, and there's a lot that could be said of it. But the point is, you can't take the character of the Joker, divorce him from Batman, don't even have Batman in the story, and give him an origin story. That's a different character. It doesn't matter how interesting the trailer looked. It doesn't matter how well put together it was, or Joaquin Phoenix is a great actor, of course, And I'll be the first to admit that teaser trailer looked like a very intriguing film about a man who is just sort of the underdog against society and civilization and civil rules or whatever, and is just slowly cracking under the pressure. That's a valid story to tell, and that story's been told a number of times, and it looks like this teaser trailer is teasing a film that would tell that story quite well. I mean, it just looks like it from the teaser trailer. That's not the point. That's not the point. You're doing harm to the mythologies. And I'll explain how. But see, the movie companies, they don't care about the mythologies. Warner Brothers could not give a rat's ass about their mythology of DC or anything like that they own. They don't care. Sony certainly doesn't care about their Marvel properties. They just want to jump in on a little bit of that superhero money. So what happens when you put some of these films out, and when they're the most recent films in cultural memory, is that becomes the definition of the character for a next generation. Now, this can go either way a little bit. So I pointed out how I quote this passage from it's a Tom de Havilland's book on Superman, in which he quotes Alvin Schwartz, and he says that every time the wrong-headed notions about Superman are just simply misconceptions of who the character is. Every time these kind of ideas prevail in the comics, Superman, he says, Tulpa Superman will always reaffirm himself and resituate himself in the stories, in the public consciousness, as he means to be. And that's as we need him to be, really. Because people point this out all the time. They try to make some sort of stupid case for the atrocious New 52 inspired cinematic versions. And they say, well, you can't say that these films aren't comic accurate because they're comics accurate to the New 52, and that just means they're not comics accurate to what you love. The New 52 are not valid comic interpretations. They're not. Because culturally, we had these characters. They had a formation period. I've talked about this before. When a character's created, if they're going to resonate with public consciousness, if they're going to really stick in their mind, there needs to be a little bit of a formation period where there's feedback from the public, and Superman eventually learns he flies instead of leaps. He's raised by the Kents instead of just dropped off at an orphanage by the Kents. Things like that solidify. Superman becomes less of a trickster, more of a bastion of truth, justice, in the American way. Once that's all situated, once that's all fixed, whether it's Batman, any of these characters, Wonder Woman or whatever, look at their history. They have remained phenomenally consistent in their cores as to who they are personality-wise. Yes, parts of their stories around them might be tweaked and this, that, but even with all of DC's crises and all of these things that the DC universe has gone through, the characters are still the characters until the New 52. Look at Superman pre-John Byrne and then during John Byrne, or even post-John Byrne. All those changes, they depowered him for the John Byrne era, the post-crisis era. They changed some things about the story, and yet that was still Superman at his core. That's still his personality. There was very little difference when he goes to, that horrible story when they're trying to, put to death Paul Levitz's great Superboy and Legion stories, and he goes back and meets that Superboy from that universe. He even meets Ma and Pa Kent from that universe, and they recognize it as their son, not because of the way he looks, but because of the way he acts. So the characters remained who they were. In 2011, that was not feedback from the audience that gave us New 52. That was Dan DiDio and whoever else forcing a reboot. Dan DiDio hates the DC characters. He's always wanted to make them darker. He's got this envious complex that he wants to be Marvel so badly. He feels that he's inferior as DC editor. So he's tried. He finally had the power, and he forced this reboot. This New 52 was a forced reboot of the entire universe, completely remaking them into a darker mold. Everybody had to be more like Batman. It was ridiculous. Batman's great as he is, but he should be the only one. That's what makes him unique in the DC universe. So you can't point to the New 52 comics and say, well, that's accurate. So you can't point to any random Joker comic book and say, well, that's accurate. They did it here. Why can't they do it in the movie? Do you realize how many boneheaded decisions have been made in comics over the years? You can't do that. That's just because something occurred in a comic doesn't mean it's valid fodder for a film. That doesn't justify that. You go by what's most iconically situated about this character in the public consciousness. That's what happens. That's what you need. Okay, so what does all this have to do with the Joker movie? Your average filmgoer who doesn't know or care about the Joker, DC, mythology, superheroes, or whatever, they just want to be entertained, mindlessly consume whatever, maybe they'll go. Maybe it'll be a fine film and they'll enjoy it. That's fine. But for those who want an accurate depiction of the Joker on screen, because we really never had that. Jack Nicholson did a great Joker, and he's my absolute favorite. But still, like I said, they gave him the origin. They did some things there. Everybody talks about Heath Ledger and raves over that. He did a great performance of the Joker, but that was a Joker in Christopher Nolan's universe, and Christopher Nolan was not making a Batman accurate to the comics of the DC universe. He was pretty honest about that even. He was making a Batman who existed as the only superhero in his universe. He's look at his comments. He said this, and he also turned Batman into a very Nolan-esque character, took out all the detective stuff. My students are shocked every time I get to the detective archetype in my class and I start to talk about Batman, because they know Nolan. That's their Batman, and what? World's greatest detective? Is he what? He's a ninja, that's all he is, So we want an accurate depiction of, certainly the Suicide Squad one wasn't, but we want an accurate depiction of the Joker for finally once. We don't want another Elseworlds. So you don't give him an origin. Gotham City should not look like just any other city outside. Stop it. Stop it with this nonsense. DC is not the world outside your window. That's Marvel. Metropolis is supposed to be in some ways, a futuristic city of tomorrow, but certainly a throwback to Art Deco New York, and it's supposed to have that bright, clean, hopeful feel. Gotham is supposed to be the opposite. Gotham is the Gothic side of Art Deco. It's why it's called Gotham, which was another name for New York at different times. It's supposed to be dark and gargoyle architecture, and that is the look of Gotham. These are not supposed to just look like Chicago or New York or whatever. Arkham State Hospital. Are you kidding me? That was supposed to be Arkham State Hospital? Arkham Asylum needs to be a creepy-ass structure on its own island. Anyway, so those are things that the film just gets wrong. Just gets them flat out wrong. Now, why can't you just say, well, hey, it's just an Elseworlds Joker. It's just, whatever. Because this is what will hurt mythology. I started that video with that quote by Alvin Schwartz, how the tulpa versions of these characters will reaffirm themselves because they were molded by a cultural consciousness, and if we stray from that, they'll be brought back to those versions by the cultural consciousness. We've seen this happen with a lot of DC characters through DC Rebirth. When New 52 failed, it utterly failed because it didn't resonate, and it didn't bring in the bucks, and they were made to bring it back. So here's how you do hurt mythology, though. You simply stop telling iconic stories about the characters, and you let them fade from cultural memory. And anything that does remain in cultural memory related to the characters is now just stories that miss the mark and that don't tell the right story. I mentioned how my students, Nolan is their Batman, and this takes place a lot easier in just your average culture, your average moviegoers and whatnot, than it does to comic books lovers and whatnot, because comic fans will go back and read back issues, or they remember the character and they're not going to forget the older you get and whatnot. But seriously, culture in general, you say Batman to my students, they think Christian Bale. They don't know anything about him being a detective. It wasn't even played up to the point that it was supposed to be played up to in Batman v Superman. People try and say it wasn't. That's all they know. That's what they know about Batman. And they know Joker is a Heath Ledger character. So, all right, fine. What happens in the next generation? What happens when all anybody knows about Batman is Zack Snyder's Batman and Punisher, the guy who kills people? What if all the people know about the Joker is this guy who just, he was a good guy and he had this origin and he just cracked, and who was the driving force to him cracking anyway was that evil Thomas Wayne and the Wayne family and all of that. Not to mention, how old is the Joker supposed to be at this point when Batman finally loses his parents and becomes Batman and trains 10 years or whatever? Yeah, anyway, all this kind of stuff is wrong. But that's the thing. You keep telling wrong-headed stories about these characters, and if that's all that we have in the popular culture, then that's all the popular culture will eventually remember. And they'll go elsewhere. That need for the character and the role that character had previously filled, that'll still be there, but they'll eventually, if you don't give them any stories, if you don't give them anything to cling on to and remember, they'll just go fill that role with somebody else. It breaks my heart, but when I talk to my students about Superman, all they know is big angry murder guy in Zack Snyder's movies. They don't know Christopher Reeve. They don't know the comics. They don't even remember Smallville. That's even outside of the cultural memory at this point. For your average, young person, and it's fading even more as the years go by because of the way time marches on. You need to have new, iconic stories always being told of these characters to keep them in the cultural memory. Now, why? Because these cultures, these characters, these iconic characters fill a role. They've latched on to this need that culture has for each one of these characters. For the aspirational character to look up to, like Superman. For the dark, edgy rebel to stand up to the system when the system's corrupt, like Batman. And the Joker is a key character. We need the Joker as an antagonist to Batman, because the Joker is a stand-in for every opposition, in a sense. He's not a direct allegory, but he's definitely a stand-in in terms of tensions and whatnot that we work out within ourselves as we read mythology. He's a stand-in for all the forces in the world who would stand up against us whenever you dare take a stand on anything. I know I said stand a lot. Whenever you say, I believe this, whether it's religious, whether it's a cultural, whether it's an ethical thing, whatever in the world you stand up for and say, no, I believe this. People come out of the woodwork to try to prove you wrong, to try to take that away from you. We live in a very trickster society in which everybody wants to try and blur every little boundary, very much over the top. And the Joker's that trickster villain. The Joker's the one who, yeah, if you stand up and say this is this and that's that, oh no, he wants to question and challenge everything you do. That's what he wants to do to Batman, as I just explained. So the Joker, reading stories about Batman versus the Joker, this is a catharsis. This is a way to work out, as I've quoted before, the internal vicissitudes of man. That's what mythology does. When you take that away from the Joker, when you just try to make him something else, make him a very empathetic character, make him this and that, it's irrelevant whether or not you've told a decent story or an intriguing story. That's not the proper story to tell with that character. I've been singing this song over and over with Superman and Batman, and now I have to sing it for the flippin' Joker? Are you freaking kidding me? This is not the character, and Warner Brothers doesn't care. They just want that sexy Batman money, so they will continue to make any kind of story related to his universe, whether it's a Alfred Pennyworth prequel series or the Joker origin or whatever in the world they can do, and they'll hide behind some sort of Elseworlds, this is just a different version argument. But that doesn't work because you are hurting the character in the culture. You are making it lose its iconic place and what it does for culture. And if you continue to drive home these stupid Elseworlds-like wrong-headed versions of the character without giving us any kind of iconic interpretations to cling to, then the character will no longer fill that role, and culture will turn to find some other character or some other source to fill that role, as long as they still need it. There is a give and take. Does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? If you take some of those roles away, take some of those characters away, it is very possible that that culture stops aspiring, stops working out the tensions that they worked out with those characters. And there's just so many problems with this movie, in terms of its interpretation of the Joker, and in terms of the damage it could do to the Joker mythos, to the Batman mythos, to the DC mythos in general. Just when I thought there was hope for DC, they pull some of this nonsense, and it's anyway. So that's all for this one. Yeah, I'll talk about it more in a live stream tonight, perhaps on Son of Family Skate Live. But for now, keep tuning in to the other videos. Do please click like and subscribe. Thanks so much for everybody who's been supporting the channel, and do check out my own graphic novel, Tales from the Stacks. Link is in the description below, in which we do have solid villains and solid heroes and sexy women and heroic heroes and all that good stuff. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the hero stories you love. Thanks for watching.